Now, the clock is ticking with the energy price cap for this October being announced on Friday, remember, by Ofgem. Various analysts settling on eye-watering figures, most of them well over £3,500. And to add yet more misery to this latest forecast, inflation could hit 18.6% by next year, says Citibank. Yet despite the imminent financial cliff face, still no detailed plans, it seems, from the government as to how or when they are going to help us, as Truss and Sunak continue to slug it out. Now, Kwasi Kwarteng, widely tipped to be Truss's Chancellor, if she's successful, says help is on the way, but so far his cavalry haven't come over the hill. So, what to do? Well, Keir Starmer and Labour shot to the lead in the opinion polls by announcing their plan for a freeze on the energy prices. But they estimated it would cost an extra £15 billion. But only £3.5 would be coming from their plan to backdate the windfall tax from May to January. Indeed, the Institute of Fiscal Studies warns much of the gap will then have to come from more borrowing at a time, remember, when government debt is already at £2.4 trillion. So perhaps not the most prudent of solutions, if you remember Gordon Brown. Meanwhile, strike action spreading, as we said, from workers in the ports to the courtroom, becoming increasingly frustrated, it seems, at a lack of government action or even empathy, perhaps. Britain's sharpest political and financial minds have been trying to find a way out of the morass. And often, where there's a will, there is a way. But when does creative thinking become a crackpot scheme? And everyone, in Michael Gove's parlance, takes a holiday from reality. Well, the latest wheeze from the Treasury is for GPs to write prescriptions for money off energy bills. Yes, that's right, not a happy pill, but a happy bill. A senior government source said it was something they were interested in looking at. Maybe as payback after the NHS Confederation rocked the boat by warning the UK was facing a humanitarian crisis over the cost of living. Well, Labour said the prescription idea showed the government had lost the plot and hadn't a clue about the level of pressure on the NHS. As for the doctors, they seem so nonplussed rather by the idea they haven't even bothered to react to it, if, of course, you could get an appointment to actually ask them. So, yet again, we may have to turn to Britain's businessmen and women, those who daily have to balance the books, to come up with some sort of scheme that works. Iceland, remember the frozen food chain, already helping out with a range of £1 products to help with basic food staples. Well, now they've introduced their own interest-free loan scheme, the Food Club Card. They hope it will help to break the cycle of food poverty in Britain. It's been trialled regionally before being introduced across the country. Small loans on a card of between £25 and £100 to cover the shopping bill when things are tight, and then paid back, but with 0% interest. It's so far received a 95% approval rating from those using it. So maybe Liz Truss should consider freezing out Kwasi Kwarteng and installing Iceland's managing director, Richard Walker, in number 11. A 95% approval rating might be rather useful in the months ahead. Well, Francis is still with us, a barrister, of course, who isn't on strike because you were saying you're not in the criminal practice at the moment. I mean, just to explain very quickly, I mean, there are those barristers who are doing very nicely in the commercial and corporate sector, but it's the criminal aspect of legal aid and what they get for appearing in court that's the issue at the moment. Yes, exactly. And to give an example, the fee for an appearance was for many years £46. That might be the only appearance the barrister had. I think now it's largely gone up to £100. But out of that, a barrister will often have to pay their travel for it. And then there will be days when they don't get any work at all. And the other point to remember is that because barristers are self-employed and the courts weren't sitting, and most of them were not getting any form of support from the government, or a large amount of them weren't, their fees went down by 23% in the lockdown/pandemic period. So all this, the energy and the cost of living, this is really going to hit them as well. They're not sort of fairly well cushioned and should we say privileged people, as some might imagine. Yeah, well, absolutely. Either because they're very junior and receiving very little, or those who are receiving more because they're more senior will more likely to have families and mortgages. And many are having to live in London because many of the major courts are in London. Yeah. I think 60% or so of the bar is in London. Do you think this is going to get sorted soon, or probably after a new government's put in place? Well, I'm sure it'll be after a new government
is put in place, whether we have a new Chancellor or not, probably the decision would have to be made by the Treasury, even if it's an individual matter, and even if the budget could be balanced differently. And the Treasury just has to appreciate: are you going to support an essential public service and an
law and order
part of it's not law and order, but also justice and justice under the law and the rule of law.
Yeah.